want you to bear that in mind. Keep that time in mind. 9 months after they were written and 6 months after an investigation was asked for. And then the DPP goes on in same page 2. It cannot be overemphasized that the request for preservation of the relevant data was sent approximately 9 months after the date in which the purported emails were apparently generated. It also cannot be denied that this factor had the potential to affect the outcome of the investigation. I want to repeat that. The DPP is saying in this letter of conclusion that coming to this issue 9 months after, it cannot be denied that this factor of lateness had the potential to affect the outcome of the investigation. And of course, he goes on to point out that the subject accounts could not be provided to the police investigators in the absence of legal process. Yesterday, the AG went into a little detail of the legal process that was involved. The DPP goes on page 3 to say, it is also noteworthy that notwithstanding the apparent form and structure of the purported emails themselves, their content, when matched against evidence of the prevailing circumstances in Trinidad and Tobago in September 2012, was sufficient to reach the standard of probable cause. These relevant applications were therefore successful and warrants were obtained for the internet service, from the internet service providers. So the DPP is confirming that what was in front of him or her reached the standard to go and get a warrant for the internet service providers. There are those who will tell you it should have been dismissed out of hand from day one. But the DPP is saying the information, the content, met the standard required to get a warrant, not only in this country, but outside. And the warrants were had in the United States, where the service providers are, and at the FBI, and under our mutual assistance treaty. And of course, he goes on to say that in going to Google and Microsoft, what they were aiming to do, and this is DPP, quote, they were asking these providers, they were asking Google and Microsoft whether they can certify that which was produced to them. So in other words, they went for certification. Bear that in mind. To formally, and the Justice Department replied to the DPP, and the DPP is quoting that reply in the letter of the DPP here, saying this. The Justice Department answered as follows, and that answer is whether you can certify. The department says, to formally answer your question, the FBI produced all the data and communication data for the captured accounts for the specified period, which were provided by Google Inc. Any data within the specified period which was or may have been deleted by the account holders prior to the issuance of a preservation order would not be producible in any form and therefore not included in the return, unquote. Simply meaning, it is too late now to try to find out anything about these emails because you waited too long. The period of 9 months does not now allow us to confirm and to certify as you request. That is what the Justice Department told the DPP, and that is what the DPP told the country yesterday. And then it goes on. The United States Department of Justice, dealing with Google, says as follows, and I quote, and this is the DPP quoting what the Department of Justice told them in response to asking if Google can certify. According to our records, Trinidad and Tobago issued a preservation request on June 20th, 2013. It is possible or likely that the data that you seek for the period in 2012 may no longer exist due to the account holder's possible deletion of the data prior to the preservation order. And the DPP explains that. That's a quotation I just made there. The DPP goes on to explain what that means. It said, what this meant was that since the requests for preservation were not made until 9 months after September 2012, any emails deleted during that 9-month period by the account holder would not be available at all. That is the DPP talking to the police and talking to the country, because the DPP authorized the Attorney General to tell this to the country. And let me repeat that. What this meant was that since the requests for the preservation were not made until 9 months after September 2012, any emails deleted during that 9-month period by the account holder would not be available at all. And then, of course, the letter from the DPP goes on to say that the service providers were approached directly for preservation, and what they asked to preserve is, item 3, evidence that was gathered to support the email threads. Well, you were told what happened with that. Notwithstanding that certain events were in the public knowledge, evidence, and the DPP puts that in bold, evidence had to be gathered to substantiate all of the surrounding circumstances in order to establish whether such evidence would be a sufficient basis for any charge or charges. The DPP goes further. Since probable cause was established on the evidence, the applications were successful and warrants were served on the internet service providers. So in other words, this wasn't a wild goose chase. This was not a Mickey Mouse thing. But you had to determine that the sufficient basis for a charge or charges. And then, of course, the DPP interestingly points out that the Director of Public Prosecutions had recused himself from advising the police in this investigation. And of course, I know you know why. The reason is that the Director of Public Prosecution himself was a witness in this matter and had to recuse himself where the investigation was concerned. And he passed the matter to be dealt with. And that is why this letter is signed by the Deputy Director of Public Prosecution, because the investigations and the allegations involved the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution, who had recused himself from the matter. Conclusions. So after those details, the Director of Public Prosecution signs off on these conclusions. And I read for you. The authenticity of the 31 subject emails can neither be confirmed nor denied. So, ladies and gentlemen, if the Director of Public Prosecution, after conducting this detailed investigation, guiding the police, because the police was used to do it, home and abroad, first line in the conclusion is the authenticity of the 31 subject emails can neither be confirmed nor denied. That is not what the UNC is saying, you know. The UNC is saying that they have been vindicated. They have been exonerated. Well, we are saying, once the DPP is saying that it cannot be confirmed nor denied, there's no vindication in that. There's no exoneration in that. It is just what the DPP says here. It cannot be confirmed or denied for the reasons given. It goes on to say, however, evidence gathered supported the fact that several of the events referred to in those emails can be confirmed as having actually occurred in the way and at the time referred to in the emails. This last assertion is supported by the fact that an independent district court judge in the United States of America was satisfied that the evidence had sufficient cogency to result in the granting of the warrant to search the servers of the internet providers Microsoft Corporation and Google Inc. So in other words, there was sufficient substance to the allegations or the request for an inquiry to cause the U.S. courts to grant the warrant to search at Google and at Microsoft. But as was pointed out by DPP before, they were told by those agencies, because you have come 9 months later, no preservation of those emails could have been guaranteed. And therefore, we cannot say yea or nay. And that's why the DPP is saying you could neither confirm nor deny. And of course, it goes on to say that the warrant provided for and obtained in the United States, such a warrant would not have been granted if the applicants had not shown probable cause. That is, that those surrounding facts and circumstances were sufficient in themselves to support a belief by a man of reasonable caution that a crime had been committed. Ladies and gentlemen, I am that man. I am the man who received this first. And I am the man who took it to the president. And I am the man who took it to the parliament. And this is the DPP saying that the U.S. court, by granting the warrant to go for confirmation and certification from those two houses, Google and Microsoft, that such a warrant would not have been granted if the applicants had not shown probable cause. That is, that those surrounding facts and the circumstances were sufficient in themselves to support a belief by a man of reasonable caution that a crime had been committed. I am a man of reasonable caution. That is why, when I got it 6 months before, I didn't run to the media. I didn't run to my colleagues. I went to the President of the Republic and asked him to have it inquired into by the Integrity Commission, because I am a man of reasonable caution. And if after 6 months nothing had happened, what I'm being asked to do by the UNC is to leave it so. Well, it suited them, or it might suit them to leave it so. It doesn't suit me, and it didn't suit the population not to know that this situation existed. The Director of Public Prosecution goes on to say in the letter, notwithstanding that foregoing, what I just said there, the evidence gathered did not reach the threshold required for any criminal charge to be recommended against any person. Put another way, we were not satisfied that there was sufficient reliable evidence of a criminal offense by an identifiable suspect which could be adduced before a court upon which a jury properly directed could reasonably be expected to be satisfied beyond reasonable doubt. In simple English, the DPP, the evidence that was being utilized to further these investigations was not sufficient for a charge to be laid against anybody. It doesn't say that there is no evidence. It says doesn't reach the threshold. So it exists to some level, but not the threshold to be satisfied that if you lay a charge, you stand a better than average chance of getting a conviction. Ladies and gentlemen, we are familiar with that situation in our country on a regular basis. This is a country where we know what this means. It means that you get away, but you wasn't charged. It doesn't mean that nothing happened. And whoever was involved here, not the first time that happened in this country, that you have been investigated, you found some evidence, but not sufficient to lay a charge. So this thing about fake this and fake that and who should apologize and who should resign, they are trying to take us down their rabbit hole, and we're not going down there at all. This is crystal clear. Right? This matter required an investigation. An investigation was requested at many levels. No action was taken. And the only time any action was taken was when it was raised in the Parliament, and we had an investigation, and now we have a conclusion. And we will not allow the conclusion to be twisted and spun by the UNC as though they are so hurt that this outrage took place. Let me take you to what actually happened on the day when I read out the content of those pages. One of the things that happened was that the center point of Section 34, Justice Volney, former Minister of Justice who was fired, because remember, this was in the Section 34 season. Justice Volney by that time had been fired a few days before, I think it was, and was in the backbench. And I want to read from the Hansard, for those of you who have short memories and who are now listening to the UNC screaming and playing victims and trying to make it look as if I did something personally so outrageous and so wrong. I want to read from the Hansard of a UNC member, a former minister, a former judge who was in the Parliament and responded in this way. I quote from Mr. Volney's Hansard of Tuesday, 21st May. Mr. Speaker, I in my heart wept in this seat 43 as representative of St. Joseph yesterday. That was the day when I presented the papers, the documents. When I heard the voice of truth in one little part of a said statement in the email purported to have been sent by the Attorney General, in which it is said that the writer had advised the Prime Minister to get rid of the member for St. Joseph as minister. But this is the part, and he quoted the part that had him weeping. Quote, but she had not yet made up her mind, unquote. Or, quote, she said that she had not made up her mind, unquote. As I stand here, and I'm continuing to read from Mr. Volney's Hansard record, and he's saying, quote, as I stand here, and as God is my witness, I can tell this country, and I can tell this House, Mr. Speaker, that that was the truth. Because up to the time at 4:30 p.m., on the day of my demise, September 20th, 2012, when I left a private meeting with the Prime Minister, the Honorable Member for Siparia and the Member for Chaguanas West, the last parting words the Prime Minister had given me was that, and he quoting her, I have not yet made up my mind, unquote. That if I take that contextually, in the body of all the emails is what I can see. It is as the face of God, the honest truth, the gospel truth. So unless the UNC is saying that I was missing from that meeting, a meeting between Mrs. Prasad Bisesa, Minister Jack Warner, and the Volney who was fired in that meeting, that I would have known that this is what she said to Mr. Volney, so I fabricated emails to put that inside there. I'm good, ladies and gentlemen, but I ain't that good. And he, Mr. Volney, Minister of the UNC, backbencher in the government, he goes on to say, this warrants an investigation with the scene sanitized of the most important player in it, the Attorney General. Mr. Volney, a member of the UNC in the Parliament of that ilk, UNC minister, was saying that the Attorney General should demit office so that this investigation be concluded without his presence and or involvement. This is the same investigation that has now come to a conclusion, inconclusive, as described by the DPP, that the UNC would have you believe is some fabrication, outrageous fabrication by the opposition leader that should result in my withdrawal from office, calling for resignation. But of course, the inconclusiveness is based on the fact, excuse me, the inconclusiveness is based on the fact that the request was made, to put simply, out of time. Ask yourself, would we have been in time if instead of waited 6 months to get the investigation started, as I did, when the president had it gone to the Integrity Commission, had I gone straight to the Parliament and had there been an investigation right away, it might very well be that we would not have had a 9-month period. And the preservation orders that were asked for, what might have happened, we don't know. Excuse me. At the time when it came to the Parliament, evidence had to be gathered. What happened then? All the people involved, bar one, flatly refused to cooperate with the police by handing over their electronic gadgets to be investigated by the police. A statement of fact. That is a fact. All the people who are now bleating about this matter, and I must say though, it was strange then and it is strange now. I could not and I still cannot understand how, in a situation like this, the police has to investigate, evidence has to be gathered, how politicians, using largely government equipment, could tell the police, I am not giving you this source of evidence because I have a reason not to give it to you. Which is what they did. They did not allow the police access to their gadgets, their hard drives, their computers, their phones. So the fact of the matter, this inconclusive situation that ends this investigation, is that the UNC persons did not cooperate with the investigation. They could jump high, they could jump low. They could crawl, they could crawl. They did not cooperate with the investigation. But they did something that's of interest. I want to take you back to the Express, a story in the Express that was published sometime in 2013. I don't have the exact date, but it was in the Express 2013, Port of Spain. And it's about a fellow called John Berryhill, who was brought into Trinidad and Tobago. Let me read the report that was carried in the Express against the background of all that I have just said. United States-based computer forensic analyst John Berryhill, J-O-N, John, who has been hired to prove the falsity of emails allegedly linking Prime Minister Kamla Persad-Bissessar to conspiracy in public office, is secretly being provided with accommodation funded by the state. He has, however, not been officially retained to do any work for the state. Contacted yesterday at his U.S. California offices, Berryhill Computer Forensics, the computer expert told the Express that, and quote, I'm quoting him here, as he told the Express, as reported by the Express, all questions should be referred to Mr. Israel Khan, unquote. Israel Khan was the lawyer of record for Mrs. Kamla Persad-Bissessar. He is the man who is now calling for an investigation into me. Sources close, I continue the Express story. Sources close to the investigation told the Express that Berryhill, retained by Israel Khan Senior Counsel in the Emailgate probe, has been quietly occupying Unit 7 at the Housing Development Corporation Federation Park Villas, Port of Spain. Khan yesterday denied any knowledge of this. The Express goes on. He has, however, confirmed that it was he who hired Berryhill, and it was he who was paying out of his pocket for Berryhill's visit to this country during the investigation, but said, and the Express quotes Mr. Khan, I have been given the undertaking that I would be repaid for what I have spent. He didn't say who gave him the undertaking. But he said he was given an undertaking that whatever he spent on Berry Hill, he would be reimbursed. The Express goes on, quoting Mr. Khan. So far, I have already spent about $23,000 for his 2 visits and accommodation at the Hilton. I spent $7,000 for his first visit and another $8,000 for his second visit. All I know is that my driver takes him back to the hotel. What he does after that, I don't know, unquote. The Express reports that the Federation Park villas are intended for use only by government officials, and goes on to say, the Express also learned that security officials stationed at the upscale housing compound, where at least 2 government ministers are housed, have noted a flurry of activities taking place where computers and electronic devices are being ferried in and out of the compound. The Express goes on. Sources also confirmed that not even the groundsmen and janitors are allowed to enter the premises at Unit 7. Berry Hill last visited Trinidad and Tobago on Tuesday when he, along with Khan, accompanied the Prime Minister on a visit to police headquarters in Port of Spain, where the Prime Minister handed over her computers to investigators probing the emails. Remember the famous photograph? And having taken it there, a very strange development took place. Agreement could not be had between Mrs. Prasad Bisasa and the police. They couldn't agree on terms for the source of the evidence to allow the evidence to be gathered. So you know what happened? They left the police station with the evidence. That is what happened. They were negotiating and bargaining terms. They didn't get terms suitable to them, and they left the police station. And we are now being told that 9 months later was too late. But on that occasion, it was never left to the police for the investigation. That's why I said, persons of interest in this matter never cooperated with the police. And then it goes on to say, Mr. Khan is saying this now. If he goes, referring to Berry Hill, if he goes to Federation Park, I don't know anything about that. What I know is that he never stays for very long periods. Meaning when he comes to Trinidad and Tobago, he doesn't stay for very long periods. But he came at least twice. And then he goes on to say, if he is doing checks on other computers, I am not paying for that, unquote. And then he goes on to say, my information could be limited. Everybody is using the newspapers, including me, to project a case that puts them in a good light. So if he is doing something else, I don't know, unquote. This is the lawyer from Mrs. Kamala Prasad Bisasa responding to the Express about Mr. Berry Hill having access to the evidence sources, mainly the computers and other electronic gadgets in Trinidad and Tobago. And that happened at the end of June 2013. So ladies and gentlemen, that, what I just told you there, everything I just told you there, are the undisputed facts as summarized by the Director of Public Prosecution. And as far as we are concerned, everything is contained in the sentence that says, we cannot confirm or deny. It's as simple as that. So if there are those who want to take exoneration, they're free to do so. If there are those who want to make allegations, they're free to do so. But what they're not free to do is to create their own facts of what is contained within the correspondence of the Director of Public Prosecution to the police. And all of the carryings on yesterday, and all of the, I understand, I saw the opposition leader saying that she's consulting her lawyer to take legal action against me. Well, there's no action more heinous that she could take against me than what she has already done in this matter, which is to go to the Parliament and move a motion saying that I should not have the temerity to come to the Parliament and ask for an investigation. An investigation here which involved the United States Justice Department, the FBI, and the service providers, which all concluded that the best we can do for you is to tell you that because you have come after 9 months, those emails could not have been preserved, and therefore we cannot confirm or deny their existence. And as for Mrs. Prasad-Bissessar, what I would say to her is simply, thou doth protest too much. Because she goes past, having not dealt with the content, the script, the sentences of the Director of Public Prosecution's letter. You get all this emotive hurt and feigned hurt. And is now in that scenario, is making a case for other people who have other criminal matters before the court, accusing the government, the PNM government, of being responsible for improper conduct against her colleagues. To the point where she ends in the Express by saying, and I quote, trying to get sympathy from the wider public, today it is one woman left standing, she said, adding that 2 elections around the corner, the PNM will use every trick in the book to bring trumped-up charges. This is a former Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago who appointed an Attorney General and defended him. He's before the court now on serious criminal charges, brought a replacement into the Senate, and had him being prepared in the event of an accident to become Attorney General. He too before the court on criminal charges. This is a leader of a party who is defending a corporation chairman who has been charged for bribery. And this is a person who knows that this government has been resolutely pursuing misconduct from the kleptocratic cabal that existed in this country between 2010 and 2015. And we are resolute in pursuing those matters on behalf of the public of Trinidad and Tobago because we have a mandate so to do. In 2015, we told this country of the plethora of wrongdoing that took place under the government of Kamala Prasad-Bissessar. And the country gave us a mandate, put them out of office, and gave us a mandate to pursue that. And she is now telling the country that the government is going to bring trumped-up charges. That is so that if anybody is charged for criminal conduct or misbehavior in public office or any similar thing, she could go on platforms and put it across to the innocent citizens as though it is politics. And of course, those who have already been charged, here she is, instead of apologizing to the country for her poor selection and her indefensible actions, she is now talking about trumped-up charges. Well, all I will say to all of them, when you go to the court, if you have been charged for criminal conduct, just go in the dock and tell the judge that is trumped-up charge, and the PNM send you there. Because in our 63-year history, the PNM in government never had and does not now have the authority to charge anybody. And I will say to the national community to disregard Mrs. Kamala Prasad-Bissessar and the UNC with this foolishness. Anybody you see being charged for a crime in this country can only be charged by the police under the guidance of the Director of Public Prosecution. This government cannot say who to get charged, what charges should be. Government has no say. The most the government could do is unearth information. And if that information points to criminal conduct on the part of anyone, only the police or the DPP can intervene and bring about a charge. And once that situation exists, the government has absolutely no say or no role in that. And Mrs. Kamala Prasad-Bissessar, SC, MP, knows that. She knows that. And therefore, it is pure mischief and political spin to come and talk about trumped-up charges will come for election. If they take comfort in that, they're free to do so. And if they take comfort in the fact that they have been exonerated by a statement that says, we can neither confirm nor deny that these things happened or didn't happen, then the English language means different things to some people, but we are free to misunderstand. If you have any questions concerning this matter, I'll take them now.
Feel vindicated?
I don't have to, or I don't want to feel vindicated. I don't have to. I have been accused by them of fabricating these documents. I dismissed that from day one as folly and spin. What I feel, I'm comfortable that the investigation after how many years? 5, 6 years? After 6 years has come to a conclusion. It was quite disturbing that these things could have been there lying without a definitive conclusion. The definitive conclusion is that we cannot go any further because of what I just described to you, that the request for preservation of what might have been there is too late. So I am satisfied that the proper action was taken. And that proper action is that having received those documents, I sought an inquiry, and I got an inquiry, and a detailed investigation was done, and it has come to this conclusion, which is beyond reproach.
But the conclusion is that it is inconclusive.
Well, then, but we have no other mechanism to go beyond that.
Right. But some of the things you've said suggest that you still have a belief that there was something amiss.
But you would have heard the DPP saying that in order to get the warrants, a certain substantial nature had to exist. There had to be some substance, and that there was corroboration that some of the events that were pointed to were seen to have taken place. So we know that some things happened. It is not that if anything, nothing happened. I quoted for you Rowley there. I was the most stunned person in the parliament as mover of the motion to hear a member of the UNC just come out of the cabinet. In fact, he was Mr. Section 24. And to hear him get up in the parliament and say, I've been to Christian churches. I've never seen the face of God. I hope to see it one day. But Rowley get up in the parliament and said, this I see is the face of God, to prove the level of the truthfulness of it. I didn't say that. I know also for a fact, and this was in the public domain through you, the media, I know for a fact that the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution was being penetrated in a particular way, where the special branch of the police had to give the DPP advice as to how to protect the office from it. So things did happen. So we can't pretend that things did not happen. And the American court, looking at what was in front of it, asking for a warrant, said there is enough corroboration, right? And there's cogency in this, which requires that a warrant be offered to get to Google and to the other Microsoft. But we just went too late. And this delay and this refusal to hand over documents to the police here in Trinidad and Tobago, who is speaking to that? Now that we are being told that there has been a delay which caused us not to be conclusive in one way or the other, who is speaking to the fact that delays were in fact established? And by whom? And for what purpose?
Well, that brings me to my next question, which is that this, therefore, you're saying that this is another case for which we have many, many, many of the wheels of justice moving too slowly.
This one is not one of those. You see, when this matter went to President Richards and he sent it to the Integrity Commission, my expectation, especially since the persons involved were persons in public life in that way, I still think that it was reasonable to assume that this would have been given, some priority and be dealt with dispatch. Unfortunately, that did not happen. Yeah, there were issues about the Integrity Commission, a quorum and appointment of members, but the bottom line is this was sufficiently important that this should have been looked at. People are saying, how could you have made these allegations against the Prime Minister? I didn't make them. I was simply asking for an investigation into them. And that's the difference. And having got as far as the President and the Integrity Commission, I would have expected, and I would still expect now, that if any similar situation occurs and gets to any of these offices, that they would treat it with dispatch. So we don't end up in a situation now being told by the authorities abroad, who are the custodians of the matter, we cannot preserve anything for your investigation because it's too late.
Do you accept any blame for the 9 month, that delay, that 9 month interval in which they could have, in fact?
As I said earlier on, when I passed it to the president, who agreed that it warranted an investigation, and he told me that he passed it to the Integrity Commission, I simply let the system work. Because as you said here, I'm a cautious person, and that was my caution. I waited for 6 months, expecting to hear somewhere along the way that it has been dismissed or it has been confirmed. It is when after 6 months, I inquired, as I'm required to do, to discover that nothing has happened. So I don't know that I could have done anything else. I left it to the system to work. And if I was malicious and I was, whatever they're trying to paint me as now, I would have leaked this to you, man, long time. Since the first day I got it. Any of you here, I could have gone on a platform with it. I could have come to the parliament before with it. I didn't do that. I waited for 6 months thinking that the Integrity Commission was dealing with the matter. And once I was told that it was not being dealt with, and it appeared as though it will not be dealt with, up to now, I confirm that it is always my view, and it will be my view, that such an investigation was warranted. And I'm supported in that point of view by the judge that granted the warrants in the United States on this matter.
Prime Minister, I'm wondering, because you read episodes from the DPP's statement.
Do you all have the letter?
Yes, sir.
Well, you have the whole letter.
I'm just reading a part of it, just for that's context to the question. So it says, as you said, put another way, we are not satisfied that there was sufficient reliable evidence of a criminal offense by an identifiable suspect, which could be adduced before a court and upon which a jury, properly directed, could reasonably be expected to be satisfied beyond reasonable doubt. Is that in essence not essentially the end of this, apart from anything else that you're saying?
That's what I'm saying. The DPP has now concluded the matter. It has to be concluded on that basis. We know of no other avenue by which you can pursue it. Right? But unfortunately, we have come to that pass because of a certain development. Right? So I cannot say that unless something new comes up, brand new, or one of the witnesses come forward and say, I am now prepared to speak differently. The DPP has ended the investigation, because remember, all along, this was an investigation. And the persons who were being investigated from day one was taking the position, it's all fake, there's nothing to it, it's made up, except the first day when I read them.
We are therefore right back where we started.
Very much so, because I mean, if I tell you, I cannot confirm or deny that something happened, what conclusion would you come to? Would you say it didn't happen? You might think it didn't happen. That's your thought process. You might think it happened. That's your thought process. But if you are investigating something and you come to a point where you cannot say, and these are the words of the Director of Public Prosecution, who, having used the police service and all the arms of the state, and basically what they were seeking was certification, and it could not be certified.
Do you regret that you didn't go straight to the police?
No. No. I never, remember, when I came to the police by asking for an investigation in the parliament, I didn't ask for police investigation, I asked for investigation. Because if the Integrity Commission could have taken that investigation, you have one line, you know. And there's something which I still find a little strange. I'm not a lawyer, but my understanding is when the police is investigating a matter, or when the Integrity Commission passes something to the police, once it goes to the police, doesn't the Integrity Commission have to stop? Well, okay, I'm reading it wrong then. But we did have two parallel lines of investigation. One at the Integrity Commission, one with the police. That's a fact. And I still think that the the Integrity Commission would have been an appropriate place to have this investigated for the reasons I gave a while ago. That it could have been done in a way, nobody scandalized, nobody undetermined. And of course, the Integrity Commission has a little more clout than the police in getting, so, and the confidentiality clause. And that is why I went to the president, right, as against going to the commissioner of police. Of course, there was one commissioner of police who had said, even before any investigation was done, that the matter was, to be dismissed. But that is as par for the course. But I want to say something else. Notwithstanding the behavior of the UNC on this matter, the DPP is the authority that uses police investigations to come to conclusions as to who should or should not be charged. And I trust that that is a permanent state of affairs and that they won't cherry pick. When it suits them, what the DPP says is gospel. When it doesn't suit them, he is acting improperly, because that is their behavior. We on this side, we accept the institutions and the authorities, and we understand that there are times when it will not please you because you might expect something else. But this thing about demonizing when it doesn't suit you, so as to, in this case, all they did is ignore what was said by the DPP. In all the fulminations yesterday, they never address the substance of the letter as written by the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution, because that does not serve their purpose.
Mr. Prime Minister, the source of the information, does that remain anonymous?
Which source? Which source?
The original source of the information.
I told you I got it from a whistleblower who made it available to me. I didn't tell you where I got it from. Maybe if I knew, I could tell you. What?
It was an anonymous source.
Anonymous means you don't know. Right? Anonymous means you don't know.
Well, what I'm saying, if over all these many months, if it was ever revealed to you?
No, it was never revealed to me, but it came to me from a source that put it in a way that I would get it. And that is why I took a while to look at it, to see what it was. And when I saw what it was, and I saw the corroborating parts of it, I thought that it warranted an investigation, and one that could be done in the way I described. Right? So, but as I said, the defense from those who were named in it was to imply that I did it. But that doesn't surprise me. We came to Parliament to pass legislation to protect whistleblowers. And what is the UNC position? No protection for whistleblowers. They call them snitches. And snitch must dead. This government, we pass whistleblower legislation to allow persons with information to make it available so that something can be done about it. And it's not on every occasion that you'll have a conclusive outcome. Okay? But I'll tell you one thing though. We are resolute that we must, in Trinidad and Tobago, set about to build a new society which will reject the kinds of outcome that we are having now, where persons could see the script of the DPP that says, I cannot confirm or deny, but then you go around parading, I'm vindicated, I'm vindicated, I'm exonerated. That's not how it goes. And of course, we have to provide no safe haven for corrupt action, either by appointing corrupt people or by protecting them when they are identified as such. And you know, and I know, that we are in government today, not as Mr. Israel Khan says, because of this, but because the UNC ran a very corrupt, kleptocratic government for 5 years. And when the election came around, the country had enough of the corruption that was rife in this country, known by name, rank, and serial number. And today, we are seeing the outcome of that, where persons are being held to account. And if they would want us out of office, they have to get your permission, you, the people of Trinidad and Tobago.
Prime Minister, are you disappointed based on the outcome of the EPP's letter?
I'm disappointed that we were not able to move with dispatch so that we would not end up in a situation being told that you've come too late, and therefore what might have been there, what was there, and what has been erased cannot be recovered. That is my disappointment.
As a member of Parliament, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, you said you weren't making allegations, but you were calling for an investigation into information provided to you. But if a member of Parliament speaks, that member takes ownership of what he or she says. Apart from the time period, that 6-month period, and waiting on what you were convinced the Integrity Commission was investigating, you found out it hadn't. Was there any other action you took to corroborate or confirm the authenticity of the information before you went to Parliament?
After what other action could I have taken? After 6 years, the police ended up in this situation. What could I have done that was better than that? The police, with international help, end up in this situation saying, I can neither confirm or deny. Right? But the content, right, pointed to instances of developments that we were known about here in this country. Right? There were certain things that we knew. So it was not it wasn't a blank piece of paper we were dealing with. Right? There were corroborating situations in there which warranted an investigation. That's what investigations are for, to find out. Investigate means to find out. If you know everything, you don't have to investigate. When you investigate, it's because you don't know everything and you need to know. So you find out by an investigation. So this demonizing of a call for an investigation and this playing the victim has no place in it. Because if we had gone in time and the Google searches had said conclusively and definitively that this is so, then I couldn't argue with that. I called for an investigation and he says, no way, he's not here. If on the other hand he says, yes, I can confirm that, what would they have said? Don't confirm it? But when you find yourself in the middle of not being able to say yea or nay, we just have to live with that.
But the Integrity Commission, which was the body that you continue to say you felt was the appropriate investigative agency, in fact cleared the officers. I mean, it caused controversy within the commission.
Let's put it this way. The action of the Integrity Commission at the time when the Director of Public Prosecution that was using the polices was saying that the investigation was still underway, and that was now is inconclusive. That action, and I said it before, that was a capricious action because there was no process to the conclusion. And as a result of that, that resulted in a member of the Integrity Commission resigning and stating his reason for resignation. So the ending by the Integrity Commission was not one that I would recommend at any time. And of course, the use of that by the government to expel the opposition leader, I would say that was all contrived.
Then you will have to admit now that your choice of the Integrity Commission, in hindsight, may not have been the best option because at the end of the day, it is the police investigation.
But you must remember, Integrity Commission is an institution, not an individual. The Integrity Commission is an arm of state, an institutional aspect of state. So if one person failed, doesn't mean that the institution itself.
You've had bad experiences.
Yeah, but I've had bad experience in life too, but I want to live too.
Dr. Rowley, given what has happened with the investigation and what Mrs. Prasad's essay is saying, are you confident in retired Justice Sebastian Vento leading the Commission of Inquiry?
Of course I'm confident. It's about competence and it's about character. And I see no issue of competence or character here. And they're quite separate issues.
Do you have regrets not going to the Integrity Commission to find out if the investigation was being pursued earlier?
That is precisely what I did. I spoke to Mr. Ken Gordon, I think it was on a Friday, and I went to Parliament on the Monday, and the UNC savaged him on the Tuesday. You remember how Mr. Gordon, simply by confirming to me that the Integrity Commission was not acting on this matter, and I said so in the Parliament, and he became a target of, eventually he had to resign because he was being terrorized by the UNC for simply confirming a statement of fact. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. You have another.
Mr. Prime Minister, what are your thoughts on the special branch report with regards to these reputed gang leaders being awarded contracts?
My thoughts on that, very simple and straightforward. If there are gang leaders who are known as such, or persons in gangs, we took a long time in the Parliament, I think we took 2 shots at it, to pass anti-gang legislation, the purpose of which is to allow the police, upon being satisfied that these situations exist, and these persons are engaged in criminal conduct of that nature, that the police will charge them and have them be so labeled, and that's what we expect.
Mr. President, how do you respond to the Commissioner of Police concern that these so-called gangsters continue to get, reportedly continue to get state contracts?
Well, we are concerned because if that is what is happening, we would we are working with the police as a government to give them all the resources, and we expect that if these facts are known, right, that they'll be charged, and not being charged for getting a contract, but being charged for being involved in gang activity. Because understand something, under this government, we have made gang activity a criminal act. If you are engaged as a gang leader, if you are engaged as a member of a gang, if you attempt to recruit people into a gang, these are now serious criminal charges. That wasn't always so. It is so now. And the police has that tool, and if information exists where a person can be labeled as a gang leader, right, then that person is facing the jeopardy and the peril of that law. And that's what we expect. So we're not going to get involved in any other thing other than if there's evidence, and we expect that the police will be gathering that evidence. We know it's difficult. Sometimes it takes time to get it. But gather the evidence, and the law is there to prosecute such persons. There's no shortcut.
I have one question, Prime Minister. You said the Moody's report. One of the things that they had said was that the reopening of the refinery will have a positive short-term impact on growth and potentially positive.
We said that.
Moody's.
The government said that.
Well, I'm repeating the statement of
The government.
Moody's.
Moody's agree with the government.
Right, but it also says potential positive effect of the longer term if the new owner improves the refinery's operations.
Well, that is not surprising. If a new owner comes in, remember this is a refinery which was it has all kinds of issues, right? But it's operational. It was a going concern when we stopped it. The new owner would be required to operate it in a particular way, and we expect efficiently and safely. That's all they're saying. We as a country, if somebody comes in and wants to use a refinery, it has to be operated safely. And of course, if they're spending money using the refinery, we presume they'll only do so if it's being done profitably. And that would be beneficial to Trinidad and Tobago.
Just an interruption. Also, the Moody's report speaks about expected growth and so on in the economy, but it also did say that in the context of financial outflows and foreign reserves, the central bank currently limits its sales of foreign exchange to $75 million twice per month at the intervention rate, which is effectively the official exchange rate. And they talked about the issue of foreign exchange affecting business in Trinidad and Tobago.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, let us not pretend that we are Sweden, Norway, Austria, or Denmark. We are in Trinidad and Tobago. We up front, we understand that we are earning less foreign exchange than we used to. And we know the reason why. We've been over this a number of times. There is not as much foreign exchange available to us as a people as some time before. So even though the demands are there, we know the demands are there. But in many instances, the demands are not met because as we prioritize that demand, some people are not getting what they expect to get. Our demands, let's say the priority, we've got to pay public debt up front. That is already set. We've got to buy medicine for the hospitals. That's a priority. We have to get people who are using machinery in the manufacturing sector, that sort of thing. We have to give people money to import raw material to keep the manufacturing sector going. These are priorities. And therefore, we make the priority to ensure that we, whatever we have available, that we prioritize. But everybody cannot get, simply because, as a country, we just do not have the amount that we demand. And until we improve our exports, earn more foreign exchange, this would be so for a little while. And I think we all understand that. I mean, but it's not easy to accept. But we understand it. We know the source of our problem. We've lost in over a 24-month period 20 billion Trinidad and Tobago dollars. That's what? What's that? 3 billion, almost 3 billion, 3 billion US dollars that we normally would have had, which we do not now have. So what do we do? And of course, in that large expenditure and the demand, we were importing a lot of things because we had the ability so to do. Many of those things are non-essentials, and some of them are even harmful. So in setting the priorities, well, those non-essentials or even harmful products cannot get the same priority as medicine for the hospital. And we don't have any option in paying the public debt, because if we default on our public debt, then all fall down. So while these make conversations, they're not news to us. What we're trying to do is to work our way out of that situation.
How does that affect your plan for the budget going forward in the next fiscal year then?
My plan is to hold the Minister of Finance, responsible for a budget that gives us the best option within the circumstances of our resources.
Dr. Rowley, when can we look forward to an update on the Law Association's report on the Chief Justice?
The Law Association, if I can't speak for the Law Association, I never will.
What?
No, I think you need to rephrase that question.
The question is the reports on the Law Association regarding the Chief Justice.
The Law Association sent me a request that I do certain things. I told you that I would take legal advice, and I have been in the process of doing that. And the legal advice that I have indicate that I don't need, or I should not, acquiesce to the Law Association's request. So we move on.
So when was this advice?
When was it?
Yeah, when did you make that decision? Because
I made the decision the day I read the advice. Weeks ago. You see, I wasn't going to take advice. I wasn't going to take advice from the Law Association. I told you I don't advise myself. I went and I got legal advice as to whether, in fact, I should take advice from the Law Association. And the advice that I got is that I should not.
did it give a basis for it? I mean, can we get a little more on
About it?
the nature of the advice? Yeah.
Well, yes. I mean, I can tell a little more later on. I mean, I'll tell you exactly what was said at another time. But I got the advice as to whether I should or should not do certain things. I get that all the time. I get that every day. On matters of this nature, I don't advise myself. And in this case, I didn't even I didn't rely on the Attorney General's office because there were some element of conflict there. So the decision not to act or to act on a daily basis, I'm guided by proper advice. Well, from where I sit, it was never. From where I sit, I was never part of that. All kinds of attempts were made to draw me into it, and as a matter of fact, I think there's some matter in the court right now, and that is one of the reasons why I've been reluctant to say much about it publicly, because there's a matter in the court that sprung up overnight somewhere about some conspiracy between me and the Attorney General, me and the Chief Justice, and that is an attempt to overthrow a judgment that exists in the court. Are you all aware of that? The UNC took the PNM to court in the election petition matter, and a judgment has been given in favor of the PNM members. Out of the blue, arising from this left field of the Law Association and its various incarnations and activities, overnight, while I was dealing with this matter of them sending me their correspondence and their volume of documents, a matter sprung up back in our court here, seeking, it's at pre-action protocol stage. But have they filed suit? But I don't know the details. But what I do know that extreme caution is required, because what is happening is that some sort of a trap is being laid to draw me into this matter of the actions of the Chief Justice, so as to make a case against the case that they have lost, to have a judgment overturned. We're dealing with some dangerous people here, you know, right? And I now have to be very careful and take the advice I get. Right? And I've been doing that scrupulously. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, we've come to the end of today's weekly post-cabinet meeting briefing. Follow us for all the stories from the briefing and more on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and YouTube at TTT Live Online. I'm Mahalia Joseph Wharton. Have a good afternoon.